The air in the Nevada test range shimmered under the weight of summer heat and secrets. Tarmac cracked and peeled beneath the soles of soldiers and scientists alike, but no one dared complain. Here, silence wasn't just protocol, it was survival. Even the wind respected that. Captain Elijah Rourke adjusted the strap of his sidearm as he stepped out of the hangar, the sun painting his weathered face in golden shadow. He wasn't a large man, but he moved like someone who knew the weight of command and wore it anyway. 20 years in special forces had carved him into something leaner than muscle and meaner than steel. A man accustomed to solving problems others were too afraid to name. At the far end of the runway, a sleek black object rested beneath an array of camouflaged nets and thermal shielding. It resembled a fighter jet in the same way a shark resembles a goldfish. Same basic shape, entirely different intent. Rourke had seen it fly once. It hadn't used wings. He found Dr. Marin kneeling beside the craft, running a scan with a handheld device that blinked in a language no Earth-born engineer had invented. Marin looked more like a retired history teacher than the lead physicist on Project Anchor Point. Unruly white hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a voice that always sounded vaguely distracted. "Morning, Doc," Rourke said. Marin looked up. "Elijah. Good. You're here. We got a problem. We always have a problem. The question is it interesting?" "This time," Marin muttered, "I think it qualifies." He handed over a data slate. The holographic display shimmered with alien script, some of it annotated in English, others left untranslated. Rourke didn't need to read it to understand the tension written in Marin's clenched jaw. "Is that—" he trailed off. Marin nodded. "A signal. Not from the artifact itself, but something inside it. A response ping. And we didn't initiate it." Rourke exhaled through his nose. "How long?" 6 minutes ago. Then another at 3. Regular intervals. Like it's checking for status updates. Like someone's expecting a report. Exactly. They both stood in silence for a beat too long. The wind stirred again, whispering across the metal hull of the alien vessel like a warning. When the artifact had first been discovered, buried beneath an Arizona desert storm shelter, long dormant but perfectly intact, it had sent ripples through every level of government and science. The world never found out. The program was buried beneath black ink and deeper lies. But for those who'd touched it, studied it, flown it, it was clear Earth had not been alone. And now, Earth might not be safe. Rourke passed the slate back to Marin. "What's the fail-safe window? If it follows standard terrestrial encryption logic, maybe 2 hours. If it's something more sophisticated..." Marin didn't finish the thought. Rourke tapped his earpiece. "Patch me through to command. Priority red line." A moment later, the line buzzed with static, then resolved into the clipped tone of Brigadier General Shea. "Go ahead. We've got external comm behavior from the anchor point asset. Regular intervals. Likely outbound. We may have tripped an automatic beacon." "Are we compromised?" "Not yet. But if someone's listening, they're going to notice the silence after the next ping." A pause. Then orders. Rourke hesitated. "Prep for escalation," he said. "We don't wait for their first move." "Approved. You have full authority." "No mistakes, Captain." The line went dead. Marin stared at him. "You just greenlit a preemptive defense without evidence of aggression." "I greenlit survival," Rourke replied. "This thing came from somewhere. We have no idea what its creators expect, or how they'll react to silence. But if they show up and think someone stole their property, I'd rather greet them with open eyes and loaded guns." As the sun slid westward, the base transformed. Troop transport drones descended onto runways. Mobile artillery units unfolded like sleeping giants. The perimeter shimmered with electronic defenses activated for the first time in a decade. No broadcast went out. No warning was issued. But the men and women on site knew what was happening. Earth was bracing for visitors. Later that night, Rourke sat alone in the observation dome above the test facility. Through a reinforced dome of polymer and steel, The stars blinked in serene ignorance. He sipped bitter coffee and considered the possibilities. A diplomatic envoy, a scouting party, or something worse. Something that didn't ask questions before asserting ownership. He wasn't afraid of a fight, but he was afraid of what humanity might become if that fight went poorly. Behind him, the door slid open. Agent Mara Callahan stepped inside, boots echoing against metal. She was younger than Rourke, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, a counterintelligence specialist with a knack for anticipating motives before they formed. "You're expecting them," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "I'd rather expect than pray." Callahan nodded. "Satellite recon picked up heat balloons at L2. Not our satellites. Not anyone's. Timing fits." She leaned forward. "So what happens if they come looking and decide Earth isn't worth negotiating with?" Rourke met her gaze. "Then we show them why Americans are the most feared species in the galaxy." Neither of them smiled. There was nothing funny about it. Just a truth sharpened into certainty by generations of defiance. Humanity had never been the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced, but it had always been the most stubborn. And somewhere out there, something was watching, counting down to the moment it would arrive and find out exactly what kind of animal Earth had bred in the dark. The stars blinked again, and the waiting began. The chamber was dim, lit only by the soft glow of data streams cascading down glass panels. Alien officers sat in solemn silence, their bioluminescent skin patterns pulsing with unease. On the central dais stood Supreme Strategist Vec Theran, a creature of immense stature and crystalline intellect. His voice, when it came, vibrated through their bones more than their ears. "You have all seen the footage. 5 reconnaissance agents. 2 recovered. 1 unresponsive. 1 dead. 1 still in decontamination after psychological collapse. All from a backwater planet not yet on the Galactic registry." The chamber remained silent. Theran gestured, and a hologram bloomed to life in the center of the room. A planet, Earth, rotated gently within a lattice of intelligence overlays. Maps, radio intercepts, surveillance captures. This planet should not be capable of resistance. Not at this level. Not with this ferocity. A smaller holographic box opened beside the globe. It displayed the image of an American flag fluttering against a sky stained with fire and smoke, captured from the visor of a fallen scout. Behind it stood the human soldiers. Calm, bloody, unbroken. Theran turned to the Galactic intelligence operative beside him. "Begin the profile review." The operative, an insectoid analyst named Chelvier, clicked his mandibles. "We began monitoring the human species 6 planetary cycles ago. Rapid development, irregular technological bursts, and a dangerously high threshold for chaos. However, most civilizations follow patterns. These humans do not." The chamber stirred with concern. Chelvier continued, pulling data into the air. "A dominant subfaction of this species, self-identified as Americans, displays disproportionate aggression compared to global norms. They are defined by an ancient mistrust of authority and a near-religious devotion to individual action." Charts scrolled past. Military budgets, protest movements, survivalist enclaves, gun shows, martial arts tournaments, and hundreds of films that appeared to glorify violence and rebellion. In one historical era, they launched themselves to their planet satellite using less computing power than a present-day wrist interface. Not for survival, not for conquest, because it was there. Another panel opened. Scenes of warfare danced in sequence. Gettysburg, Normandy, Fallujah, Kabul. Across them, the faces of soldiers changed, but the resolve remained the same. "They do not merely fight," Chelvier said. "They celebrate war. They frame it as a crucible of identity. We attempted to simulate their decision-making through predictive AI. The model imploded. Emotional logic overrode all projected rational outcomes. Theron's tendrils coiled behind him, thoughtful. And their command structure? Nominal, Chelvier replied, but elastic. Initiative is not just tolerated, it's expected. Field leaders adapt mid-conflict. Orders shift in response to local reality. It is less an army, more a swarm of determined minds working in unstable synchronization. A murmur of unease passed through the tribunal. They do not fear death, Theron said. They expect it. But more concerning, they prefer to earn survival. Chelvier nodded once, slowly. Their cultural myths glorify sacrifice, redemption through pain, and defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. There is no universal template. Each soldier is a different doctrine in motion. The lights dimmed further. A final hologram emerged, this time from the interrogation drone that had hovered during the Nevada skirmish. It replayed Captain Elijah Rourke's last words before the drone escaped into the night. Come back with more next time. We're just warming up. Duran watched it in silence. No bravado, no empty threat. Just a quiet warning wrapped in calm confidence. The kind that unsettled even apex predators. One of the advisors leaned forward, voice laced with anxiety. Supreme strategist, surely there are countermeasures. Biological suppression? Orbital containment. Duran didn't turn. No, not yet. Not against them specifically. Not until we understand what we are truly dealing with. This is not a strategic miscalculation. This is a categorical anomaly. Chelvier turned to the strategist, lowering his voice. If they escape their gravity well en masse, it will not be a question of war. It will be contagion. Every civilization they touch will either resist or become like them. That word hung in the air like a specter. Become. Then we begin containment, Duran said, his voice hardened now. Full spectrum surveillance. No contact without military accompaniment. If they are building ships, we sabotage the ports. If they reach the stars, we deny them foothold. I want contingency war games by tomorrow, and I want their language learned in full. And if they reach the threshold before we are ready? Chelvier asked. Theron's eyes narrowed, faceted and cold. Then we pray they bring only boots and not flags. Across the stars, deep in the bowels of a Nevada military base, scrubbed from every public map, Rourke stared at the holding cell. The alien was still restrained, its limbs bound in carbon weave straps. Its armor had been stripped away, leaving slick gray skin and strange glandular nodes that pulsed like they were breathing through the skin. Rourke didn't speak. He didn't ask questions. He just watched. The creature blinked first. It uttered something low, guttural, rhythmic. The interpreter AI couldn't parse it, but the tone was clear. A question. Rourke leaned closer, resting his forearms on the glass. You're wondering what happens next, he said. I don't know either, but I do know one thing. He stood up straight, his voice flat. This isn't the end of your mission. It's the beginning of ours. The alien's second eyelid slid shut, and far above Earth, a dozen more listening probes clicked in a silent standby. Observing, measuring, counting down. The sky over Cape Canaveral was cloudless and silent, save for the hum of distant transformers and the low murmur of wind brushing across launch towers. Inside the compound, lights flickered to life in patterns too deliberate to be random. Motion sensors responding to movement no human eye had yet seen. A team of 5 Galactic Coalition infiltrators moved with mechanical precision, their armor shifting shades to match the shadows. Their mission was simple: disable Earth's long-range propulsion prototypes before humans could breach orbital space under their own power. Containment, not confrontation. Surgical precision, not war. Their leader, Geron Cole, adjusted his visor as he crouched behind a concrete support beam. His internal HUD was already mapping out energy signatures, infrastructure nodes, personnel clusters. Despite its primitive surface, the facility beneath was deceptively fortified. But humans had a pattern: centralize, secure, repeat. Predictable. Proceed with silent breach. Giron whispered through their neural channel. They move as one. The outer wall melted under a soundless plasma cutter. Inside, the launch control building was dimly lit, empty but for automated systems on standby. The infiltrators fanned out, each targeting a key component: navigation core, propulsion arrays, data servers. Within minutes, they would cripple the entire program. Then one of them stopped moving. Giron noticed it too late. The operative's silhouette shimmered, then collapsed in a heap, struck by something too fast to track. A shadow detached itself from the ceiling, human, armored in matte black, holding what looked like a crude harpoon gun. Alarms didn't blare. They didn't need to. A trap had been sprung, not by automated defenses, but by men. 3 more humans emerged from hidden compartments. One hurled what looked like a lunchbox until it hissed midair and burst with electromagnetic force. The infiltrators' cloaking systems flickered, revealing them in full under the red glow of emergency lighting. "Target live," a voice barked. "Engage hard." Giron pivoted and fired a pulse round. It hit nothing. A steel baton crashed into his forearm, shattering the interface on his weapon. He turned to find himself face to face with a woman barely taller than his chest. Grinning like this was a bar fight instead of interstellar sabotage. "What are you?" he growled. "American," she said, driving an electrified spike into his leg joint. The other infiltrators scattered, disoriented. Their optical feeds were jammed, comms scrambled. In their place, they received bursts of local radio chatter, distorted by overlapping civilian bands, country music, CB trucker calls, and something called college football commentary. One of them fled into the maintenance tunnels, only to trigger a net trap stitched from carbon wire and fishing hooks. Another found himself surrounded by lights, not weapons, but camera flashes. Civilians, dozens of them, armed not with blasters, but shotguns, drones, and thermoses of coffee. One wore a "Don't Tread on Me" vest over a Hawaiian shirt. Another was holding a drone tablet in one hand and a turkey leg in the other. This wasn't a military response. It was a militia welcome committee. Inside the control room, Giron struggled against reinforced zip ties and a very real headache. Rourke entered the room slowly, flanked by the same woman who disabled him. Agent Callahan, Space Force Division, Special Contingency Branch. Rourke looked down at the captured infiltrator, rubbing his jaw. "You're not the first to try this," he said. "But I'll admit, you're the boldest. Cape Canaveral, that's sacred ground. You don't sneak onto someone's launch pad and start breaking toys." Giron hissed. "This world is not yet ready for the galaxy. You should remain grounded." Rourke nodded, almost thoughtfully. "That's the thing. You're right. We're not ready." He leaned in, voice dropping an octave. "But we're coming anyway." Outside, one of the militia leaders lit a cigar and stared up at the night sky. A stealth drone streaked overhead, following the trail of the one surviving infiltrator trying to reach the ocean. He didn't make it. The next morning, news channels reported a training exercise at the launch complex. No further details were provided. But on encrypted defense networks, footage was passed from base to base. Aliens caught, detained, and then interrogated by men and women in patchy uniforms and unshakable grins. The message was spreading, not just among humans, but among the stars. In the orbital observation module of the Spire of Judgment, Chelvier stood in stony silence, staring at the replay. He had run the numbers. Tactical probability matrices, psychological warfare models, all failed to account for what he had just seen. "They baited the breach," he murmured. Duran joined him, quiet as a shadow. "We believe them to be reactive," Chelvier said, "but they're not. They provoke, then counter." Theron's mouth barely moved, and they appeared to enjoy it. Chelvier turned slowly. "Sir, this was a militia-led operation, not state-sanctioned, not globally coordinated. It wasn't even their best. Duran nodded. No, it was their volunteers. For the first time in a generation, the strategist didn't speak as a commander. He spoke as something closer to afraid. We must escalate, Duran said. If containment is no longer viable, we consider seclusion. Chelvier's gaze shifted back to the earth below. They're not building ships to explore, he said. They're building exits. And somewhere in a garage outside Houston, a teenager was welding a homemade thruster to an old RV, laughing to himself about gravity and dreams. Because the countdown had already begun. The Earth looked small now. From the forward viewport of the Starjumper Liberty, Captain Elijah Rourke watched his home recede into the velvet backdrop of space. No fanfare marked the moment, no fireworks or speeches, just the quiet hum of fusion drives and the resolute silence of stars. Beside him, Agent Callahan finished locking in the first interstellar navigation point. Her fingers hovered over the console a moment longer than necessary. You okay? Rourke asked without looking. Just waiting for the moment someone tells us to turn around, she said. Still doesn't feel real. He gave a quiet grunt. That moment passed the second we lit the core. Behind them, the bridge bustled with movement. Engineers, soldiers, scientists, civilians who had once been farmers, hackers, truckers, now all part of Earth's first unsanctioned starbound expedition. No global vote had greenlit the mission. No galactic body had approved Earth's debut. The decision had been made elsewhere, in bunkers, garages, and field tents after the first confirmed alien encounter. Earth was not requesting entry. It was forcing the door. Across space, the Galactic Coalition scrambled. Surveillance networks blinked into full alert. Emergency channels pulsed with data traffic. The Spire of Judgment initiated interception protocols. But Earth was no longer waiting for permission. Inside the Coalition's war chamber, Supreme Strategist Duran stood before the Galactic Council. Holograms of the Liberty and its escort drone spun in crisp 3D projection. This is no longer speculation. Humanity is coming. We may destroy this vessel, but we will not destroy the idea. And that idea is viral. Voices rose in concern and fury. Some demanded retaliation. Others, quarantine. But one voice cut through the debate. Chelvier, his tone flat and cold. We tried observation. We tried interference. We even tried restraint. He turned toward the council, mandibles twitching with controlled tension. They have no single leader, no planetary government to negotiate with. Their innovation is chaotic, decentralized. They are unpredictable because they are individually self-determined. Duran stared at the projection again. A human vessel patched together from stolen tech, ancient blueprints, and pure audacity. And yet, it moved through space with confidence, elegance even. They do not function within our parameters, he murmured, because they were forged by adversity we never imagined. They expect resistance, and worse, they thrive under it. On board the Liberty, below deck, the crew gathered in a common chamber hastily converted from a cargo hold. A massive U.S. flag hung at the far end, flanked by patches from dozens of other nations. Beneath it, a chalkboard bore the mission's unofficial motto, "Boots first, questions later." An old man stepped up to the dais, Dr. Marin, propulsion theorist turned accidental diplomat. He held up a worn leather book. "This," he said, holding the Constitution aloft, "is not a perfect document, but it's proof of something aliens didn't count on." He paused, letting the moment breathe. "We wrote rules before we had spaceflight. We believed in liberty before we understood quantum fields. And now that we're out here, we're bringing that belief with us. Not to conquer, but to compete, to survive." A cheer rippled through the chamber. Rourke stepped forward next. He didn't speak right away. He simply scanned the crowd. Faces marked by calluses and fire. Ordinary people doing an extraordinary thing. "We were underestimated," he said finally. But we've always been underestimated. By kings. By empires. By physics itself. He looked toward the viewport above. And now by the galaxy. The ship shuddered. The first intercept wave had arrived. Coalition vessels emerged from fold space, sleek and massive, bristling with weapons that shimmered like knives of light. The Liberty's hull sensors screamed with proximity alerts. But no one on the bridge panicked. Every console lit up. Every protocol engaged. No central command barked orders. The crew already knew what to do. Callahan locked targeting parameters. They form a net. Looks like they're going to try a tractor sweep. Then we punch through, Rourke said. Guns hot. Deflect, don't destroy. Show them we're not the monsters they think. The Liberty's railguns deployed, targeting nodes calculated in milliseconds by an onboard AI named John Henry, a sentient defense subroutine born from a repurposed missile guidance system and Southern humor databases. Its first response came with a drawl. Y'all best duck. Explosive bolts fired. The ship flipped mid-axis, executing a gravity-defying maneuver so unorthodox the coalition sensors flagged it as engine malfunction. In fact, it was intentional. The Liberty slipped between two destroyers, dropped a pair of EMP mines, and accelerated hard toward the gap in the net. Pulses of alien fire scorched past its flanks, but the shielding held. Inside the Spire of Judgment, Chelvier watched the trajectory and whispered a thought no one dared admit aloud. They're not going around us, he said. They're coming through. Rourke gritted his teeth. Time to make first contact the American way. Diplomatic? Callahan asked, half smiling. Loud. The Liberty screamed across the void. All engines open. Alarms howled. Pressure dipped. Rivets groaned. Still, it didn't slow. As it breached the final blockade line, the Rand closed his eyes. They will not stop, he said. No, Chelvier replied. Because no one told them they were supposed to. Then the humans were gone. Through the line. Into unregulated space. And every probe, every relay, every enemy vessel recorded the moment and sent it back across the stars. A new species had entered the galactic stage, not with permission, not with caution, but with grit, defiance, and a terrible, beautiful hope. They were feared now, but soon they would be known.